This is Joe Dedman on the line.
Hi, Sheriff Dedman. Thank you. Hi, Chief.
Morning, Ann. Just doing a sound check. Can you hear me?
Yep. Great.
Okay, now I can hear.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I believe we have a quorum, or just another minute or so and we'll get started. All right. I show 10 o'clock. Mr. Chairman.
All right, let's stay on time. Ann, if you could do roll call.
All righty. Chief Solberg,
Here.
Kent Volkmer,
Present.
Joe Brocious, Sheriff Dedman,
Present.
Director Jorgensen. I believe we have Glenn Robeson attending.
Yep, I'm here.
Great. Colonel Jeffrey Glover, DPS.
Walter Mercer for the director.
Great. Thank you. Rachel Mitchell. Rachel Mitchell. Do we have Leslie on the phone?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Hi, Leslie.
Hi.
Sheriff Penzone. Chief Alanese. Robert Smith.
Here.
Brian Wright.
Here.
Brad Conley.
I'm here.
All right, Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
All right, thank you all for joining us. You should have received a copy of the January 20th minutes. Anybody have any corrections? If not, if we could get a motion to approve the minutes from January 20th, 2023.
Motion to approve the January minutes.
Thank you, Robert. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. moving on. Director McGuffin, review and update.
Mr. Chairman, members, good morning. I'd like to begin today by introducing DIFI's new director. She is joining us in the meeting today. And she is Director Barbara Richardson. Director Richardson started with DIFI on March 6th, so she's been with us just about 3 weeks now. She comes to us from the Nevada Division of Insurance, where she served as the commissioner for since 2016 until her appointment here in Arizona. And she's also served as the Director of Operations and Fraud for the New Hampshire Insurance Department for 12 years previous to the Nevada appointment. Director Richardson has a law degree, an MBA, and is very active on various committees within the NAIC. And so I'll give Director Richardson a chance to pop on and say hello.
Thanks, Jamie, and I really appreciate it. So I don't want to take up any time. I just wanted to make sure to say hello to everybody and let everybody know, I did work criminal fraud unit for a long time, and it's rough work. And I appreciate all the work that you guys do and everything you're doing for the state of Arizona. So I just want to make sure to let you all know that, I really want to make sure that you guys are successful. So, and I'm trying to make sure to keep myself, available and ready for any questions or for any concerns so that we can make sure to catch things before they get too far down the road. So I just wanted to pop in and say, good job and nice to meet you. And I'll pop off unless anybody else has any questions.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us, and we're looking forward to working with you.
All right. Well, you guys have a great meeting, okay?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Director. And I just have a few updates, and then I have a presentation that I'd like to share with the board, which is where I will spend the majority of my time today. Just on some updates, the ISA that the board approved during the January meeting for $200,000 was transferred to the task force shortly after that approval, so they now have it in their account. A couple meetings of note since the last meeting that I attended. Captain Axlin and I traveled down to Tucson, and we met with a DPS border liaison officer as well as an NICB agent. And they gave us a briefing on repatriation of stolen vehicles from Mexico back into the U.S. And so DPS and NICB work collectively on that endeavor. And it's probably something that the board would be interested in. So I'll probably put together a presentation maybe for the next meeting, just to let you know how that process works. And they do repatriate several hundred vehicles a year back into the U.S. So it's a pretty big operation. And then on March 13th, I met with kind of ongoing. I met with representatives from Planet Technology for our database and DPS, all of us on the call together to discuss the terminal operator certification. I think I had mentioned that I was hopeful that was going to be a DPS issue, that they could actually make the connection that checks for TOC certification when somebody gets on the database, signs on. Unfortunately, that's not the way it works. CPI actually controls the database of all TOC certified officers and other personnel within the state. So it's a CPI issue, which is DPS's vendor. They have been historically slow to get projects done, and so that's just kind of the situation we find ourselves in now, is that it's their issue, it's to them, it's in their queue, but I don't have any updates on timelines or anything like that. And that really is preventing us from pushing the database out to other agencies. We just don't want to grant access without knowing that that TOC certification is present. One good news piece on the ACT database is since January 31st, just a couple days after our meeting, we did start geopopulating the location into the database as a requirement. So everything that's now flowing into the database for thefts and recoveries has a geolocation affixed to it. So that's very helpful for mapping and for a lot of other data that's coming through. So it's just another situation where the data is continuously getting improved. And every time it seems like that Mary, the DiFi analyst, and I work on something, we find a bug or something that's not right, and she's working with Planet and they're correcting the problem. So again, the data just keeps getting better and better. So we're pleased with that. And now with that, I'm going to present my screen and hope that since I'm doing this myself, that I can make this all work. If not, Ann is my backup. But all right, so I assume that's looking okay. From the January meeting, we had a brief discussion on Kia Hyundai thefts in Arizona, and I think Chief Solberg, you mentioned that Gilbert was seeing maybe an uptick in that. We did a little bit of research on this, and I kind of want to use this presentation as a bit of a commercial for the ACT database. A year ago, we could not have done this. We could not have pulled this data together. The best we could have done, which is what we did on various occasions, was to go to certain agencies like Phoenix and Tucson and some of the bigger agencies, get an idea of what they were dealing with, then manually put that information together and use it as kind of a sample of what was going on in the state, hopefully getting a high percentage of, in volume of thefts or recoveries, whatever we were looking at, to make some conclusions as to what was probably happening around the state. Well, now with the database, we don't have to do that. We can literally go into the database and we have everybody's information in one place. And with the skill set from Mary Gordon, the DiFi analyst, then she can produce this information really rather quickly. And so we're just happy to have it and be able to present this in this way and have complete data for us now. And I say complete data because it's not exactly complete, because again, the location data, it was a little bit efficient for the time frame we were looking at because we didn't have that in place yet. But I'll speak more to that as we go through. Yes, I see Mr. Volkmer has raised a hand.
Director, my question is that the data that you're pulling and the maps that you're trying to generate, are they exclusive to kind of your use and DPS's use, or can other law enforcement agencies have access to this? Because we try and be data informed in the office, and if we can see, especially I'm actually more interested in the sort of geolocation. If we see that there's a large theft in this particular area, we could then deploy resources that way. But I didn't know if we have to go through you to get access.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Volkmer, the intent is that once we get the access situation with being TOC certified completed, then we will push this out to as many law enforcement agencies as can be. And so when we met with the vertical prosecutors, kind of to your point, a couple of weeks ago, we did offer that if they ever have any needs, anything that we can do for them, that's a request that can go right to Mary, and we can do one-off reports for any county, any city, whatever you think would be interesting. We can, let us know, and we will compile the data and see what we can come up with. Okay. So to begin this, the Kia Hyundai thing, I'm sure most people are aware of at least a lot of this information, but in 2021, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, this kind of kicked off where somebody or a group of people figured out how to steal Kias and Hyundais. And that vulnerability that exists within certain of those models was made popular with the Kia Challenge on TikTok. And that really got rolling in 2022. And it basically showed on the internet how to steal these cars, where the vulnerability was. And then in addition to that, it showed a group that was calling themselves the Kia Boys that were stealing the vehicles, driving recklessly, filming themselves stealing the vehicles, filming themselves driving recklessly, and also the use of the USB cable to steal the car. So that just gained in popularity. The appeal was probably a lot that had to do with the USB cable being used as a tool. And I'll talk more about how that cable is used in just a second. But first, I want to describe kind of what's going on with these cars that makes them vulnerable to this type of theft. And it's not all Kias, it's not all Hyundais, but it is the majority of Kias made between 2010 and 2021, and Hyundais produced between 2015 and 2021. So it's not all of them, even in these categories, even in these year ranges, but it is the majority of them. And what happens is thieves typically break a back window to avoid any alarms. They break the plastic steering wheel or the steering column to expose the keyed ignition. And these are vehicles that have keys, and so they break the key cylinder out away, and that exposes a plug, which I'll show you, and the USB cable fits into the matching plug. So you turn the plug with the inserted cable, and it starts the car because the cars lack an engine immobilizer that prevents the engine from starting without a paired key. So by 2015, engine immobilizers were standard on 96% of most manufacturers' vehicles. But Kia Hyundai did not produce them for cars, at least in the United States. And it's kind of one of the differences, like Canada that doesn't have this problem going on right now because Canada won't let vehicles in to be sold in Canada without an immobilizer. But the US does. So, and then immobilizers were only installed on 26% of those Hyundais and Kias. So there's a large percentage of these cars that have this vulnerability. The good news is in 2022, everything produced by both of these manufacturers has immobilizers. They require some sort of connection between the security system and like a key fob or a key, whatever the case may be, but it requires those two pieces working together. So what we're looking at here is a car that clearly has the steering column broken down. This is very simple. There's only a couple screws that into this plastic column. They can literally just grab hold of it and rip it down, and so they don't need any tools. They can break the piece away from those two screws, and then they take a screwdriver or pretty much any other tool, and they break out the keyed cylinder, and that's what you see exposed now is the cylinder. The keyed cylinder is gone, and this is that plug where the red arrow is pointing. And then if you stick the USB cable in there into the plug, it fits perfectly. That's part of the appeal. It should be noted that there's no electricity, there's no data, there's nothing that's going on in this cable that causes it to be unique other than the fact that the plug fits perfectly. So you could literally put a flat blade screwdriver in that same plug. You could take a pair of pliers, anything that would cause it to turn, and the vehicle will start. And I wanted to kind of just show everybody what Colorado is up to before we discuss Arizona, because Colorado is really seeing a problem. And Colorado is one of the only states, again with us, that has access to the database. And so they're able to produce this type of documentation in the same way we do. And now they had 42,000 plus vehicle thefts in 2022. And almost 11,000 of those were Kia Hyundai. So Kia Hyundai accounts for 26% of all stolen vehicles in Colorado. So it's really significant what's going on one state away from us right now. And then their theft rate, Colorado is #1 in the nation in theft rate. So that's number of thefts per 100,000 residents. And they're at 661. But if you look at if you isolate just Kia Hyundai, the theft rate is right around 1,400. So it's really significant what's happening in Colorado right now. And this is an example of what's actually happening in Arizona. So and the time frame we're looking at is when we had the database. So the database was deployed in May, and so this data is May through February. And there's during that time frame, there were 17,659 total thefts in Arizona, vehicle thefts. And of that number, 1,538 represented by the red slice were Kia Hyundai thefts. And if you look at just isolating the model from 2011 to 2021, which is actually probably should have been 2010, that's my mistake, to 2021 models, 1,294 of those. So largely represented by the vehicles that we're talking about. And that equals 7% of total Arizona thefts as contrasted by the 26% that is being seen in Colorado. So as we can see, it's very significant for Arizona as well. These vehicles are certainly overrepresented in this data. And so we looked at it in the top 15 because we had never seen Kia Hyundai even in the top 10 since the last time we'd kind of looked. And this was the top 10 is something that is produced by NICB. We generally look at it once a year when they produce it. We see what's in the top 10. Now we can look at what's in the top 10 every day if we want to, because of the database. So we'll be keeping much closer tabs on this so we can start seeing these type of trends happening. But as you can see, for the 10-month period that we're talking about now, the average, Kia has moved up to 7 and Hyundai's moved up to 9. But again, this is the average over 10 months. So if you look at this month by month, you see that it's significantly different than this. So, and I can show that to you at a different graph here. So what you're looking at on this graph starts on the left side in May. The months are running across the top. It runs May through February. As you can see in May, we had Hyundai's at number 9. Kias were number 10 in the top 10 stolens. And they bounce around there kind of up and down, 9 through 11 for a few months. But starting in August, that's when we start seeing things changing. And they change for both of these vehicles. And we start seeing these a very steep ascension to the point where they get with Kia's being number 3 in November and continuing there, and Hyundai eventually making their way to number 6 in January and staying there. So we're going to be really interested once we pull the March data, which is generally about a week after March concludes, just to kind of see where these vehicles are headed. This is it's kind of the same thing. It certainly shows the same trend and ascension, but in May through September, we see about 104 thefts of these vehicles per month, and then starting in September, they jump to averaging for the next September through February, they average 215 thefts per month. So the problem is definitely here, and so I don't know, where we see the last bit from January, February, where it looks like those numbers have come down. So we're hoping maybe that it got here and is, popular for a few months and maybe going to start to decrease now, but we'll only know as we follow the number of thefts in March and after that. So. And this is a map that shows the Kia Hyundai thefts from December 1st to February 28th. And there's a lot of stuff going on here, so I'll just kind of walk you through it. As noted here, due to the missing geolocation data prior to January 31st, the majority of thefts map to Phoenix PD. So that's the big red circle. So anything stolen in Phoenix before we had geolocation would map to 620 West Washington, the Phoenix PD headquarters. So that's why you see such a large number and the red mark there. But after that, we start seeing where they're actually occurring. And I'll point out for the East Valley, I was a little surprised. We see Mesa represented with a yellow because it's the yellow ones that are the next highest. So it goes red, yellow, blue. And Chief, kind of to your comment last time, Gilbert is also represented with a yellow thing there. That it surprises me a little bit that we don't see more yellow in the East Valley. But as you can see, what the map is showing us is that the majority of thefts are in the northwest corridor, that kind of area, I-17 west of I-17 area. And then you have the kind of sporadic blue on the peripheral around that. So it's just really interesting to see where these thefts are occurring, and this is the type of information that is now readily apparent to us in any way that we need to look at as far as time frame. We also thought it would be interesting to look at days to recovery on vehicles, because the thought being that if these Kias and Hyundais are not immediately going to a chop shop, if they're not being taken into Mexico, if they're not being taken overseas, anything like that, one would think that they would have a lesser number of days to recovery. And in fact, that is true. The vehicles in the same time frame, the average days of retail recovery was 16, and Kia Hyundai were 12. That was still a little bit higher than what I thought, because the general practice is to steal the vehicle, drive it around recklessly, record yourself doing it, and then you abandon the vehicle. And so I would have thought that the number of days to recovery would actually be lower than that. But in talking to the task force detectives, they say that sometimes these vehicles are abandoned somewhere where they're out of public view, and if it doesn't get recovered, they'll go back a few days later and drive it around again. Or they might be living in it. There might be any number of reasons why they still want to keep the vehicle concealed or used. So,
Director, quick question.
yes, sir.
Going back to that map, are those dots, each dot is a theft, or does it also include a recovery?
Mr. Chairman, members, there are numbers within those dots which represent the number of thefts that occurred in that general location. So, for example, I'll just point to Gilbert that's showing 10 thefts during that time frame. There are no recoveries on here.
Okay.
At this point, the map would get. I mean, we can certainly do that. Show where the vehicles are being recovered, and would be an important aspect. We did not do that here, though. Again, we only did a number of geolocations since January 31st.
That's good, but it's a good representation, and that's why I was wondering if we had the ability, if I wanted to look at my thefts and see where they're going, kind of what Kent was talking about, trying to figure out where's the source of my problem and where are they going. I would have the ability, once this is live for all of us, to see where my theft locations or where my recovery locations are, to see where they're being stolen from, right?
Absolutely.
That's good.
Mr. Chairman, members, and sir, we can do that for you in the interim, before you get access, your analysts get access to the database. We could do that for you if you're interested.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I wanted to talk about insurance impact a little bit. In some other states, we're hearing about State Farm, Progressive, and Allstate, and have assessed these vehicles, and these are their words, as difficult to insure, and they've adjusted their acceptance criteria for new business on some of these models. So I think most states regulations don't allow them to go in and just cancel that. They have to run the policy out. But what's happening is in these states, they're being not what they call non-renewed, which is they're just not offering the next year of coverage for the vehicle. So it's very difficult now for some of these owners to get insurance on the vehicles. They're having to shop around, and we haven't necessarily seen this impact in Arizona yet, but we also don't know what we don't know because there's been no filings. I did check with our staff at DIFI. There's been no filings that indicate the insurer's intent not to insure, but they don't have to know us to notify us when they do a non-renewal. So that may be occurring at this point, and we just haven't heard about it. And so mitigation efforts, there are a lot of things in play right now. NHTSA recently advised that Kia Hyundai, they've developed theft deterrent software for vehicles without immobilizers, and that will be installed free of charge by the manufacturers. And the software does a couple things. It makes it so the cars require a key to be in the ignition. So basically that paired key to communicate with the security system in the vehicle, the immobilizer, and which creates an immobilizer to start the car. And then it also extends the length of the alarm from 30 seconds to 1 minute. Hopefully they think that might, deter thieves if the alarm is going off. Update starts arriving in March, so basically at the end of this month, so we're right in the time where it'll be there, and it'll be phased rollouts over subsequent months. Unfortunately, it's 3.8 million Hyundais and 4.5 million Kias, so there's over 8 million vehicles that have to go into a dealership or other vendor if that comes to fruition. But right now it's dealerships that we're hearing will be doing the installation of the software. So you can imagine the logistics involved with trying to do that for that number of vehicles. Once a vehicle is fixed, the manufacturer will provide a sticker which will be displayed to hopefully deter thieves, because a thief won't know whether the car's been fixed or not. So hopefully the sticker will cause them not to break windows out of the cars, because there will still be a lot of potential damage to a car with broken windows, broken cylinder locks, all of those things that will cause an insurance claim or out-of-pocket cost by the owner. So they're hoping to mitigate that with a sticker. And then Kia Hyundai also made available a extremely small number of steering wheel clubs. I believe the number was like 10,000 for 8 million vehicles. So it was really kind of a drop in the bucket, but they are recommending through their communication that drivers, owners use those type of secondary devices. And then ATA's role is, and I'll say this kind of nationally with the people that we talk to from other ATPAs around the country. I don't know exactly what we're going to be doing. We certainly have an opportunity to push out this type of information to Kia Hyundai owners and encourage them to get the fixes made as quickly as possible. We also run the risk of the more information that goes out, it's much like what's happening on TikTok right now, where the more you publicize this, the more you stand the risk of making it more appealable for people to go out and steal them. So we're communicating with our counterparts in other states, and we'll be just kind of looking at the issue and seeing what the best way is to handle it. So, and that concludes that presentation. So I would certainly answer any questions if I could.
No questions for me. Just I like it. It looks really good. I'm excited to start using it and playing with it. So.
And I wanted to thank Mary Gordon. I know she's on the call. She pulled all the data, helped me with the graphics and things like that. So I just appreciate her work as always. So, and with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I lost my place on the agenda. Okay. Thank you very much. Now to Frank with the financial report.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm going to share my screen with all of you here shortly. You can all hear me just fine, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. Perfect. Okay. Actually, give me 1 second. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the financials for the Auto Theft Authority. So at the end of February, we had $11,786,596 in our fund balance. So let's talk about the revenue and how we got this high. So the first assessment, we brought in $3,619,328. And I want to spend a little time talking about the second assessment, which you see now. So the second assessment, at the end of February, we brought in $3,605,951. I will tell you that the final number for that is going to be higher. It's going to be about $3,640,000, but how the deposits worked out, that's why you see the number there. In January, I reported that we were seeing a pretty large increase, like a 4.5% increase at the time of the assessment. After the board meeting, and as the assessment continued, we started to see why this one insurance company was seeing such a large increase. Well, there was another large provider that has decided not to do policies in Arizona. So their numbers dropped greatly. We also started seeing a lot of small companies that are starting to do business in Arizona, taking bits and pieces from some of the larger companies. So there was a lot of things happen in this assessment that hasn't happened in the past. We also learned that there were quite a few companies, insurance companies, that do one-year policies. So we have one that notified us, says, hey, we're under-reporting. That was a very small amount of money, very, very small. But we did have one insurance company that came back and says, hey, we've been over-reporting. We were supposed to give you 50 cents and we're giving you $1.50. And they've been doing this for like 4 years. And when we found this out, when they found this out and presented all this information to us, it was about $14,000 that they've overpaid in the last assessment. But this is all their error, but it's been corrected. So moving forward, we are going to finish the second assessment probably about a little over a 0.5% increase over the first assessment. So we're still well above our projection that we had for the year, but just wanted to kind of give you guys a little context on how the assessment process worked this last one. Any questions about the assessment before I continue? Okay. We've brought in $152,155 in investment income. I believe this is like the second high. This in 2 years. 2 years prior, we haven't been having this high of a investment income, and we don't control that. This is done by the Treasurer's office, but this is how they invest our money. So it's great to see that we're making more money on our money with the investments. So right now we have brought in $7,377,434 in revenue. Okay, appropriation. So we've spent $381,869 from our appropriation budget, and we still have over $317,000 to spend. And I'll talk about how we're going to spend that money when I talk about in the expenditure plan. The grant category, we spent over $4,037,657, and we still have about $1.3 million to spend, which will start next week because we're going to be paying out the grants next week. We also still have our $1,432 in our SIMS fund. So that's a recap of where we were at the end of February. Before I do my expenditure plan, I'd like to yield, Mr. Chairman, and let Ann speak about the grants, and then I'll come back to the expenditure plan.
All right, thanks, Frank. Mr. Chair, members, part of my report includes fiscal year 23 grant program updates. As we do this time of year, we have worked with the vertical prosecution agencies to determine what, if any, remaining funds that they are going to have for the end of the year, so it doesn't go back to the fund balance. Mojave County specifically has a large fund balance currently due to salary savings from prosecutor vacancies they've had for over 6 months. So they're having some hiring, recruiting issues. They submitted a letter to the Auto Theft Authority requesting we do not send them the fourth quarter payment, which, as Frank mentioned, he'll be doing next week. That'll give them a chance to spend down the funds that they do have currently. We're also requesting they return $15,000 of their remaining funds, leaving them $32,260 for the final quarter, with the hopes that they'll fill that position and expend all the remaining funds. So once again, nothing goes back to the fund balance. I'll discuss this a little bit more in my report, but we'll be repurposing those funds that'll be coming back and soliciting for grants in April. So this is an action item. And so this is an action item to basically modify their funding request, receiving back the fourth quarter payment in addition to $15,000 and leaving them with that remaining quarter to hopefully get the position filled and spent. Any questions on that?
Nope. We ready to vote on that, or do we need to do something else first? Okay. If we can get a motion for what Ann just mentioned on modifying the Mojave County grant.
Does Kent have a question?
No, I was just going to move.
Oh.
I was going to move a motion that we modify that grant expenditure as directed by Ms. Armstrong.
Thank you.
Second.
Can we get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Robert. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Back to Ann or back to Frank?
Back to Frank.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, I'm going to share my screen again, and I will go over the expenditure plan with all of you. Second. All right, so I'm going to try to enlarge my screen here because I think it's a little. Okay, there we go. All right, so I just want to, like Ann mentioned, we are asking for $15,000 back from Mojave. That's what you're going to see as a negative number in March as a request. It's probably going to actually happen in April, but we're requesting the $15,000. As you can see, in April, I have reduced the amount of money going out to the vertical prosecution, and I have increased this category here. It's just a placeholder, and honestly, it says law enforcement grants. It's just the way to put the large number there. But when we do these grants in April, it could be between public awareness, law enforcement, and professional development. But that's how much money we're going to be having available to grant out starting in April. Is going to be about $69,149.50. And then the rest of this is just standard expenses for the Auto Theft Authority. We still have about $85,000 that Mr. McGuffin, Director McGuffin, and I are consistently talking about. He did want to do the upgrades with that company that is has huge delays with DPS, but there are other means that we're going to be working on utilizing these funds. So this is the expenditure plan at this time. Can I get a motion to move forward with the expenditure plan?
Can we get a motion for approval? Kent, I see your hands up.
So moved.
Thank you. Can we get a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Robert and Fred. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any opposed? All right, thank you.
All right, well, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, that concludes my report unless there's any questions.
All right, hearing none. Thank you, Frank. Ann, back to you
Right.
for grants and public awareness.
Great. Mr. Chair, members, so as we mentioned, fiscal year 23, we will be, the remaining grant funds that we have, as Frank just mentioned, a little over 69,000, will be soliciting grant requests for those in April. We'll push out a notice and post information on our website, and those grants will be presented and voted on at the June board meeting, along with our fiscal year 24 grants for task force and vertical prosecution. The vertical prosecution grant contract compliance reviews, we had 2 of those this quarter. That was for La Paz and Pinal counties. I want to thank the staff for their assistance always with providing the documentation and answering any questions that we've had. Both were fully compliant with the perfect score, and appreciate everybody's assistance with that. Any questions on the grants or the grant CC&Rs? All right, I'm going to share my screen and just demonstrate some of the different campaigns that the Auto Theft Authority Public Information Division has participated in. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we had, as you know, Super Bowl, the Auto Theft Authority, Arizona hosted the Super Bowl. So January is a really busy time for us. The campaigns, January and February, focused on the Valley hosting those big events, the Phoenix Waste Management Open, spring training, which I heard on the news yesterday. They broke all sorts of records with attendance this year. And so we presented information, all of our campaigns highlighted events and for folks to protect their vehicles as they're coming to visit. Also, with the nice weather, we have folks out with classic cars, out enjoying the nice weather. So we initiated the Park Smart campaign, once again, focusing on lock it or lose it, spring training, and then the baseball theme. We're kind of front and center since our last board meeting. So all righty. That, unless there are any questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ann. All right, next up to me, Law Enforcement Subcommittee report. We have not met, so there is no report. Robert, do you have a public awareness report?
Nothing to add beyond really all of Ann's hard work. I mean, she really does all the heavy lifting on the subject of public awareness. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you, Ann. Vertical prosecution. Leslie, do you want to kick that off for us for Maricopa County?
Hey, everybody. Good morning. Just a few basics to report. I don't have my full accounting yet, so I do apologize for that. But so far, for the months of January and February, we've reviewed slightly over 40 task force submittals, so it's been pretty heavy this first quarter. We've had approximately 12 matters plead out, go to sentencing, and 2 restitution collected roughly over $12,000 for the first quarter. So I don't have any more details beyond that, but that's what I've got so far.
Great. Thanks, Leslie.
Thank you.
Chief, I know we also have Nick Hartman from Pinal County on the phone.
Yes, thanks, Ann, Chairman, Board. 2 cases that I kind of wanted to report on was Schuler State versus Schuler Pennington. It was a relatively older case. It's 2018 case. It was a stolen trailer off of a residential property, and ended up defendant stealing that trailer and then selling it. So we had theft of means transportation and trafficking stolen property. We were able to secure a conviction via plea, and he was sentenced to 7 years in the Department of Corrections. He had a couple priors, low-level drug priors, as well as a theft prior. The second case was Julian Bethea. It was a single count theft of means of transportation. It was a 2022 case. The defendant had 2 priors, and he accepted a plea of 7 years in Department of Corrections as well. Since our last meeting, I had 2 jury trials, both guilty. For Frederick Neal was 2 separate cases. The defendant would be facing a maximum of 40 years in Department of Corrections. We're hoping for a big number. The defendant needs to go away for a long time. He's got about 12 prior felony convictions. Luckily, a lot of them are non-violent, a lot of them drugs or theft, and a lot of victim counts. So we're hoping the judge does us right on that and puts him away for a while. Also, I've been seeing, unfortunately, a huge uptick on, I wouldn't consider them low-level theft of means of transportation, but unfortunately, a lot of unlocked cars with extra key fobs left in the cars. So unfortunately, they are not locking it, and they are losing it. And I'm seeing just a massive uptick. I want to say like 10, 15 this month at least, as far as just parking it outside or in front of their residence. And then unfortunately the victim wakes up the next day and the vehicle is taken. And as we all know, the longer the vehicle is gone, the harder the prosecution on those cases are, especially when they have the key fob. There's no forced entry, there's no forced rotation of the ignition or anything like that. I've also, my chief deputy sent me an email yesterday of a news article indicating that there was 7 vehicle burglaries in just Florence on March 28th or March 29th, 2023. And it's basically, I would assume, younger adults or even kids probably just pulling on handles and taking valuables out of the cars, and just a natural escalation of that we see from vehicle burglaries to them actually trying to figure out how to turn the car on or take the car. So a lot of unfortunate, like, just unlocked vehicles. I've also been happy, but it's created a lot of additional work, but it's working as far as the flock cameras and the license plate readers. I want to say, leave the office on Friday, come in on Monday, and I got no less than 3, 4, 5 in jails over the weekend, just based on those cameras, which has been fantastic because they're catching them in such a small time frame, sometimes hours and sometimes 24 hours to 48 hours, and it's been making it a very clean investigation. We haven't seen too many unlawful flights based off of those because I think they're surprised based on the quickness of locating the vehicles. So so that's the trends that I've been seeing. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Board.
Thanks, Nick. Do we have anyone from Pima County? I think they had trials going on today. They weren't sure they'd be able to attend. I believe I have Shauna from La Paz County on the phone, if she has anything to update.
Good morning. I do not have any updates.
Okay, great.
Thank
And we've
you.
been working with La Paz as well. They've had a vacancy as well. So we've been working with them, and they'll be getting all of their funds expended for the end of the fiscal year. So appreciate that. We also hosted a vertical prosecution meeting after our January board meeting. And so we had a great information exchange. We had great attendance at that. Everybody's kind of looking forward to hopefully an auto theft investigators conference coming up, and maybe plan a special meeting and get the group together again. So, alrighty, I think that finishes up all the vertical prosecution reports.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone for all the updates. Now to Captain Axland for the task force update.
Actually, we have Sergeant John Murray here for Captain
Good
Axland.
morning. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Sergeant John Murray here with the task force. I'm standing in for Captain Axland for a bit. Anyways, just to update you on what we have, the following stolen vehicles and drug seizures arrests from January 1, 2023 through February 28th, 2023. The task force recovered 338 stolen vehicles, valued at approximately $6,519,578, $6,519,578. And we had 72 arrests during those cases. 31 of those 72 arrests had drug charges, and the task force seized approximately 13 ounces of marijuana, 2.1 ounces of cocaine, 14.4 ounces of methamphetamine, and 2.7 ounces of fentanyl. The task force served 12 residential business structure search warrants during this time frame, 1 vehicle search warrant, and 3 electronic search warrants for phones and such. The task force had 411 other agency assists throughout the state, and the task force seized 20 guns, 4 of which came back as stolen guns. Some of the highlights to hit on, events and trends. On January 26th, 2023, a long-term fraud investigation by some of our detectives culminated in a residential search warrant. Came to find out the suspect was selling stolen vehicles with fraudulent documents, using fraudulent documents to obtain the vehicles from dealerships, and stealing the fraudulently obtained vehicles back after selling them to unsuspected victims. The detectives recovered 4 vehicles, fraud documents, and approximately $70,000 in U.S. currency and cash and counterfeit monies. Maricopa County Sheriff's Office forfeiture attorney filed for seizure on the suspect's home with a value of approximately $120,000, and the suspect was booked on fraud schemes and forgery. And also, due to the success of the salvage yard operation we conducted in Phoenix, another operation is being planned currently for the Tucson area in the near future. This concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions with the information I've given.
Thank you, Sergeant. Good
You're
work
welcome.
as always. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there any member of the public that would like to address the board? All right, hearing none. Any other updates, Director or Ann? Any other updates for the board?
No.
All right. Next meeting is June 16th. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So June 16th at 10 a.m. Last order of business is there, can I get a motion to conclude the meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Kent and Robert. I'll take that as a second. All in favor of ending the day. Thank you. Say aye. Aye.
Aye.
If you're opposed, answer once we get off the phone.
Everybody stay safe.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks.